What this statement does not say is, this woman is my hero. And one of Plan B's initiatives is to help her end trapping in Montana forever. I don't know if that'll happen in our lifetime, but so when you donate to Plan B, we actually fund one of the billboards that now resides outside of Yellowstone that says end trapping in Montana and the suffering in Montana. And we help fund that with our monthly donation to Trap Free Montana Public Lands to keep that billboard up. Because prior it was, who had it before you?
Big Game Forever.
Big Game Forever. So we took it from them. Yes, that's right.
The image of the wolf.
Yes. They had a horrible image of a wolf, and they were promoting killing wolves, and we took it from them, and we've signed a contract for 2 years, and we're going to hang on to that billboard outside Yellowstone so that people know what it's really all about. So Casey has been coming to Wolf Week since the very first one. We greatly appreciate the faith that she's had in us, and here we are today. She drives all over that state, like so many, talking at public hearings, and we're so very proud of her. She's one of the unsung heroes who's out there fighting for wildlife and humanity, really. So with great honor, I introduce Casey York.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm glad people showed. I know it's hard often to come and see something like this, but we really have to. To love animals, you have to know also what's going on with them. We have a choice, they do not. The war on wolves in Montana is intensifying. We're one of the states where they're delisted. And why this is especially important, they're looking to, as you heard, delist the wolves nationally. And this is what they face. This is what state management looks like. I have a few graphic photos, and so I will go ahead and give you a warning ahead of time, and it will just be one at a time, and then I'll tell you, because I can appreciate it's very painful to see some of this. I'll tell you, and then that graphic warning, I'll let you know that image is gone. It still breaks my heart, and I see it every day, and I've been doing this now for, about 9 to 10 years, and I don't want to be desensitized because it's that compassion that inspires me. Which brings us to the poster man for trapping. This was Josh Bransford out of Idaho, and he went ahead, and he was a Forest Service employee, and he trapped this wolf. And he was notified, it was drawing attention, there were crowds of people around it. And, but he stopped, some kids had taken pot shots. That's what the blood is you see in the snow. This wolf was trapped, and kids came along and took shots at it with their guns. And then he came and took a picture first, with his grinning, proud profile before putting this wolf out of its suffering. This was the paw of the wolf. We were told in order to trap wolves in Montana and Idaho, you have to do a trapping certification course. And we were forewarned, whatever you do, don't take pictures and post them. That what Josh Bransford did, he posted these on public, it was publicly visible, could have ended wolf trapping, could have ended all trapping, heaven forbid. So this was the image afterwards, and despite the widespread shame he got, the letters that he got, that the Forest Service received, what he did was not illegal. And so he did not lose his job. And this went nationally, it actually went globally. And he, instead of going, well, maybe that was a bad choice, and the suffering and the humility and ridicule and shame, he went out and set 100 snares to get the rest of the pack. I was involved in the exposure of these images, and so we got death threats, and I was the only one at the time with children, and I was told that the threat was they were going to come, he was going to come, he or she, and kill my children and have me watch. The FBI was contacted and nothing ever came of it. So in Montana, our wolf trapping regulations, there's a 48-hour trap check, which means any traps that they set for wolves, they have to go and visually check every 48 hours. Only traps set for wolves require that in Montana, and we have one other exception to protect lynx. So bobcat trap sets for lynx in what's called designated lynx protection zones have to be checked. Otherwise, trapped animals can be left indefinitely in Montana for days, for weeks, for months. There's only 2 other states that don't have a required trap check time, and that's North Dakota and Alaska. Trapped wolves must be dispatched. Gotta love that word. It sounds like you're calling for 911 dispatch. Well, it means killed immediately by gunshot. And you have to attend, as I said, that free class. Anybody in Montana the age of 12 years old can do this. They go to the free class, it's 4 to 6 hours, play on their phones, and they get a little certificate card, and then they can sign up to join the Montana Trappers Association, buy some traps on their way out, and they're good to go. Then they can trap or shoot up to 5 wolves per season. You're told, the reason this bit about they have to be killed immediately, we're told in the wolf trapping class, which I went ahead and participated and got my little certificate, no shopping for colors. Because trappers will say, I want a black one. Damn it, I caught a gray one again. So they tell you, don't shop for colors, whatever trapped wolf you get, unless it's collared and, quote, uninjured, then you can release it. But otherwise, you have to kill it. Kind of gives you an idea of what this is all about. So here's the wolf certification card that you get. You actually could walk in, and they were already all printed out with your name on it. And you could pick up your card and you could have left. There's no testing. And they offer this class several times a year. Any trappers, any that want to do it in Montana, trap wolves, if they've done the Idaho class, they don't have to do this one. All right, so the next image is going to be difficult to see. It was one of our first known trapped wolves in the Bitterroot Valley of western Montana, where I'm from, so just forewarning you. This wolf was paraded around town, apparently. Luckily, I didn't see it, but I attached a quote that they tell us in the wolf trapping class. They talk a lot about ethics. And think, what would your grandmother think of you if she saw what you do? They don't care. They are out to kill wolves. But kudos to the instructors that at least have this in the manual and say some of these things. This image just tells you the dates that our wolf trapping season runs. So wolf trapping runs from December 15th to February 28th. You notice this wolf defecated. He took the leg hold trap and it's wrapped around the tree, probably just trying to get free. The plans we learned are now to increase the wolf trapping season on either end by 2 weeks. So to put that to the beginning of December and then until mid-March. One of the reasons these dates are set is to protect the grizzly that still hasn't been delisted despite, as much as they keep trying, because the grizzlies haven't necessarily gone into hibernation, and then they also are coming out. We've had this in Montana now where the grizzlies are out by mid-March, and maybe it's coinciding because we have these bills in the legislature to delist grizzlies, ignore, what Judge Christensen, our hero in Missoula, did. So then people will ask, well, how were they reintroduced to begin with? I mean, the trappers will say, it's the same traps. No, it's not. And Carter can attest to that. The motive is different. when they're trapping to collar or for research or reintroduction, they're going to go ahead and they're going to use a more expensive trap, a soft catch trap. Most of them don't trap in the winter because, as Liz Bradley, the former Montana wildlife biologist, told me, we don't want any frozen paws. They will also check those traps, either constantly, they have trap transmitters on there so they'll know when they got someone or got a wolf, or at least every 24 hours. And the trappers that I have talked to that are doing it for research and to help wolves or monitor wolves and don't want to cause any harm, it's every 12 hours. So in Montana, we have, of course, other species that are legally trapped, and they call them these are the Montana fur bearers. That gives you an idea of what they're considered, their value is. All you have to do in Montana as a resident is purchase a $29 trapping license, and you're good to go. Just go kill. We have up to 20 species you can trap in Montana. Many of them don't even require the purchase of a $29 trapping license. Only 5 of them have a quota. So in other words, how many can you trap? Where they set it, like bobcat. We had over 1,600 bobcat that were reported trapped and killed this season. Wolverines still remain protected because they were threatened with a lawsuit. Lynx are protected. But we've got like the little swift fox to the far right. It weighs 5 to 7 pounds. Trapping is market driven. Do you know what the value of that swift fox fur is right now? Anybody want to take a guess? $7, like $1 a pound. And they were wiped out in Montana, reintroduced, and now the last figures, they were down to 175. And I'm the only one showing up at the hearings fighting to protect the swift fox. Like, why are we still trapping them? Now, they do get caught, I was told, well, they get caught in coyote trap sets. So we're going to just tell the trapper they can have them anyhow. Well, with modifications in a different trap, they don't get caught in trap sets for coyote. Trapping is legal year-round in Montana, and some species are totally unprotected. There's no quota, like I said, there's no license for coyotes, for raccoons, for skunk, for badger, for fox. So this one kind of shows you the different traps that are used. Up on the top left is the conibear trap, which is designed because leg hole traps are so cruel that, am I still at? Okay. It was a Canadian trapper who designed these, and this is a very small one, and they're body crushing. So if this was open, this little trigger would come down here, there'd be bait on the other side, and the animal would come through and it would crush them. And then they're bigger, they go as big as what's known as a conibear 330, and it's 10 by 10. 10 by 10 inches, so imagine that. Now in Montana, 7 by 7 or bigger have to be recessed in a cubby, but there's still bait on the other side, they're still secreted. If your dog goes, imagine 7 by 7 to smell what's in there, they're going to get their nose, if they're lucky, just their nose crushed, but more likely their head and their neck. Conibears, the big ones, the 10 by 10, if they're in water, only 1/3 or more has to be submerged. So we have dogs that are getting caught. What dog doesn't want to run down to the water, get a drink, go for a swim? These are some of the leg hole traps, like a smaller one. This is a Duke, I don't know what number, but for maybe raccoon, mink. And then you've got these. This is the Victor number 3 that would be like for bobcat, coyote. And then for those of you that haven't visited the table, these are the traps they're setting for wolves. They're monsters. It's a whole new, arsenal of weaponry that mass destruction. We have grizzlies getting caught in this and elk getting caught in this. The first trapping season in Montana, a grizz was caught. Remember those dates, the December to February dates, and its knuckles were swollen. I'm not heavy enough to open this. It's opened by compressing the levers, and I'm just not, I don't have the weight to usually stand on it, but we can show a demonstration later. If we have time at the end of this, we can. And then you have your snares that I talked about, Josh Bransford. These are a favorite of trappers because they only cost a couple of dollars, whereas the other traps might run them $50. This is a couple, so they like to set these out in, there's no limit. There's no limit to how many traps a trapper can set. We had one in the legislature, he said he's got 600 traps out there. Why would we expect him to check them every day? How can he? He's got 600. Well, you don't need 600, you don't need any, but you're definitely overextended at that. So what happens with these, though, is they're so camouflaged, even the trappers forget where they are. And people will come across animals that have been strangled in this for a very long time. So to give you an idea, some people say, well, you know, why don't you just go get the traps? Well, for one thing, it's illegal to do so. And also, they're secreted, they're hidden. Nobody but the trapper really knows where they are. So here's the trap set in here. There's a leg hold trap in there. Some of them will refer to this as a pee post, so they'll put urine on there to attract. Sometimes they'll use wolves or coyotes that were in heat. That urine will sure get some attraction, and also from your dog. So again, where's the trap? It's right in there. Right in there. So I mean, this one, here's a snare. They like to, this is popular, so when the animal runs through, there's your wire snare that can strangle them. Here's a snare in the snow right there, along, and again, an animal path. Here's those big conibear, the body-crushing traps that I was talking about. That's 10 inches by 10 inches. That would be legal in Montana because 1/3 or more is submerged in water. This gives you a bit of an idea of when they're setting the traps. So here's the trap in here. He might have put wax under there to try to prevent it from locking up in the cold. And then they sift the dirt over it. And then here, this isn't the same one, but it just shows you there's a trap set for wolves down in there. How would you know? So they did a study. This was actually a study to try to see about getting transmitters on traps. And these were the results. These animals actually, they set it, they didn't set it in the winter, which is when our trapping season occurs. They set traps above freezing. So in Montana, we can have 30 below, all kinds of good times. This was above freezing, and these traps were checked every day. And yet, 18% of them in the leg hold traps that are smaller than these still suffered moderate to severe dental injuries. These animals get trapped, and they'll start biting. Biting, their leg hurts to free. What am I going to do? Sometimes the leg will go numb, and that's where they'll twist or bite it off. They don't have any feeling in there anymore. Serious leg injuries were common, and 63% of them suffered severe lacerations, tendon damage, and fractures. So just remember that when they say, the trappers will say, these are like handcuffs. Can you imagine doing that to a prisoner and that these were the results of being in handcuffs? Actually, we treat our prisoners better than we do our wildlife. So here's showing, it's a little blurry, but here's a wolf biting at the trap. And remember, they can be legally for 48 hours in Montana in this situation. This was a quote from a former vice president of the Montana Trappers Association. At least he was honest We trappers do cause pain and suffering to animals, and we apologize to no one. Notice at the bottom there where, I don't know if you can see it, but he was chewing. He's removed, looks like some of his digits, chewing on his paw. So then what happens to these trapped animals, besides what you've seen, certain species, like the coyotes, totally unprotected. So dogs can be turned loose on them, to tear them up. People breed dogs to do this kind of stuff. The baseball bat is common. It gives a whole new meaning to one of our favorite American sports. To knock them out. This one is a common method of, quote again, dispatch. They like to make it sound, less offensive, where they stand and compress. When I was at a recent Montana Trappers Advisory Committee meeting, one of the people on the panel, he said, yep, I stand on the bobcat, and this big guy with, he's the regional president of Big Game Forever, and he said, I stand on it until it stops squirming, and then I know I killed it. It's all about preserving the fur. That's the motive. It's not about ending the suffering or, like hunting, quick, clean, kill. It's about they want to preserve the fur. Now, they still shoot them, and perhaps, I can't see this image very well, but a lot of the coyotes' fur if it's not good, then they don't care about preserving the fur. This is a very common, I don't know, from what I look around, I think this is probably the number one way they kill them is with like a dog catcher pole, and they choke them. They'll call it choking them down. Sometimes that's used to release trapped animals where they'll pin them and hold them, but this is quite common to just choke them to death. This one, so this raccoon was trapped in a leg hole trap in the water, and the trapper put down the stick, and the raccoon reaches over to the stick for help, and then he holds it underwater under his foot to drown it. And that's common too with, drowning these animals. So with traps, this is a magpie that from my neck of the woods in the Bitterroot that was found. And you can see the rabbit hanging in the background for bait. This would be illegal because they can't have exposed bait within 30 feet of a trap that's visible from above. Well, this magpie saw it, and probably from above, even if it hopped along the ground. For your information, the magpie did live, which is illegal to release it, even though you can't release trapped animals in Montana. Once they're trapped, they're considered the property of the trapper. But the gentleman that found this magpie released it, and the magpie did live. This was a moose. I can't remember what state this was. It has a snare around its snout, and it starved to death. And the Department of Fish and Wildlife, Fish and Game, whatever state it was, I wanted to say it was in Minnesota, but don't quote me. They told him just leave it. He was out snaring coyotes and got this moose, and they said, oh, just leave it, it's dead. And he was so excited to go out and set more snares because he said, now the coyotes will all be feeding on this moose. There's not this, wow, I can't believe I did that. Even if he hated coyotes, where's that breaking point for them to say, I don't want to do this anymore, I feel awful. I don't encounter that. I don't run into that where there's any guilt that once in a while I'll hear somebody, they got a dog, my dad was a trapper and he caught the neighbor's dog and killed it, and that was the end of it. Or even just caught it and felt so bad, but that's a rarity, really rare, at least from all my experience. So here's a bear cub that was found that starved to death. The paw was smashed in a conibear trap, again, reaching through for the bait. It crushed on its paw, and then it eventually starved to death. Couldn't manage. This eagle was this guy was hiking in Alaska and found this eagle, and she was with her dogs, and then she found other traps. And she removed those, she rescued this eagle, and she was charged. And then the trapper even sued her. And I don't know if anybody hears, I don't know what the outcome was of that, but she wasn't even against trapping. But she was like, gosh, this is not safe for my dogs. This is horrible, and this poor eagle. This shows I actually thought it was a chicken, and then I did a little research. It's a beaver. The bait that's hanging up there is beaver. This poor eagle actually had 2 leg hole traps on it. There's never just one. They don't just set one trap. If you find one, there's more. And it had to be euthanized. So this is, like I showed you, the trap set for wolves brings a whole new arsenal of mass destruction. This is a popular one. The jaw spread on this is 9 inches from either side of it. Our former Montana Trappers Association president claimed how easy it is to trap wolves. He said, oh, it's just so easy. He just puts straw or hay out there over the traps. Well, who's attracted in the winter to straw and hay? You have elk. He also, you can bet he's not using certified weed-free hay. And here's the president, former president. He has now left for Idaho. So, because Idaho is worse than Montana, but Montana is like following in suit real fast. I got news for you. Montana idolizes Idaho. Here was, this one came out of British Columbia in one of these larger traps. And then as I mentioned, the grizzly that was caught here in our first season had swollen knuckle joints in the process. This was a little pocket gopher, and I shared this image. I mean, it's half of its body is crushed, and the trappers thought it was funny. There's just no connection. No, I don't see the respect. So this was a dog caught in a wolf trap set a little south of where I live in a town called Darby. And the dog's name was Darby. It was an Akita. And they had to chip the ice away to get its paw and the trap out. I think the only reason it survived is it had that thick winter coat. As an Akita. So the next image, I'm going to warn you, is difficult to see because it shows what happened to this leg. And I'll tell you when it's done. I totally get it if you have to look away. So this leg was caught they're thinking 4 to 5 days based on what the owner said the dog was missing. Okay. And the dog lost part of its leg and also lost his home. The owner said, we can't live this way. We don't know. I mean, it was on their land, but they have land, and Akitas, Malamutes, they like to run out there. And they said, we just can't live this way. We don't know that we can keep this dog safe and keep him. And some trappers will they'll put the traps right on the boundary of private land, and the dog doesn't know the difference. So Darby lost both, part of his leg and part of his home, or part of his leg and his home. This was a trap that, interesting enough, some houndsmen down in the Bitterroot called me and said, Casey, come take a look at this. They were out gathering antlers and came across this. So this is a mountain lion paw that was found in this trap, and I took one look at it and I said, that's an MB 750. That was set for wolves, and wolf trapping season closed about a month ago. They call this ring off. Trappers call it ring off when they twist off their paw. And the tree, they found this around, this mountain lion had torn up the tree trying to escape. And probably went up in the tree, because that's what cats do when they're threatened. They're going to go up above. This was a seasoned trapper, and he had been trapping, I think, for 13 years. The trapper said that we staged this, and the forensics proved it was legit. I mean, why would we do such a thing anyhow? There's enough evidence. We don't need to stage anything. And he got his trap back, and he kept trapping. Again, didn't say, wow, I don't really like this, because it's indiscriminate. You don't know what you're going to get. In fact, that's what they say they like about it. The trapping is like Christmas. You don't know what you're going to get. They like that thrill of going out there and, what did I get? So in Montana, since trapping was permitted in 2012, and that's one thing I neglected to say, and something to be mindful of when other states are talking about delisting, Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks said, we're going to start out slow. We're going to take it easy. The first year they didn't have trapping, and then when they allowed trapping, they said, we're going to take it slow. Just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. What does that mean? So 637 wolves were known trapped in the last 7 years. 33 to 40% were reported killed by trappers. This year, the average is 85 that are reported during the trapping season for recreational purposes. They do this for fun. This isn't livestock protection. They could say, oh, well, I'm doing it in case they might go and eat a cow somewhere. That's not what this is about. They're out there setting their traps, out there shooting, if I see one, or out there looking to shoot them. And average is 85. So this year was major. They took 130. This is one of our most successful wolf trappers posted this. It says, I don't know if you can see it, "Make Montana Great Again." He's worshipped by the trappers. He's featured quite a bit. He goes out with his daughter. So 11, you're allowed five wolves per person, whether they're shot or trapped. And they keep getting their quota. And they're in northwest Montana. Horse meat is his favorite bait. Currently, they just did an auction where you can go with him and trap with him. You can do a 2-on-1 for 6 days for $3,950, or you can do a 1-on-1 for $5,200. Go with him for 6 days to trap wolves. And then they go on to say gray, mixed colors, black, brown, they list them so you can get all excited about those colors, even though you can't shop for wolves. Here's the same trapper. So the very, what was this, 2015, you've heard talk about the killing contest. Some of you saw the movie last night, and they had wolves legal in this one. And I called and I complained to the regional manager and the warden there, and oh, don't worry, Casey, we're going to make sure it's all legal. Well, they caught this one wolf. That was last year's pup. And I can only imagine what that wolf must have endured in a trap when it was caught, and the celebratory stuff that went on for that poor animal. And that's very significant now, what's happening in the legislature. We managed to kick up enough stink that Fish, Wildlife, and Parks said no more wolves, because our statute, you can't award prizes or money for certain animals, for game species and for fur bearers. And wolves are classified as large predators, species in need of management. And I think they just didn't want to go there. So they said no more wolves. The coyotes, the coyotes are persecuted relentlessly at unphenomenal numbers by every and all means. So what do they do with these furs? Well, we can make a chair out of it, because that's what everybody wants, right? Is a chair made from their wolves. This one I found really so odd. It's the hatred that we see all over social media, and here people in Montana, they're the minority. Less than 1% of Montanans trap, but they're very loud, they're very vocal, and they promote everything. Shoot, shovel, shut up. Lately, they're recommending parvo. We need to get parvo into these wolf packs. Who can get a dog with parvo or get it from a vet clinic somehow? Let's gut shoot them so they go off and die. And then they'll say, oh God, you got a beautiful one. Boy, he's beautiful. I don't understand that. One of my degrees is in psychology, and that just kind of like, sociopaths do the same thing. So this is called a soft mount, so he can position it. He can wrap it around his shoulders, he can curl it up. Just don't. And then how does this continue? Well, they teach their children. They take their children on these trap lines. It's a mindset. I sincerely believe the same people that wiped out the wolf before reproduced, and they're alive and well, and they're sending that over and over and over again. It's generational, and us to be able to get in there, and that's why it's so exciting about the schools and teaching children and working with ranchers, saying, you know what, let's try this. Let's just give it a try, a sunset clause. Give us just a couple years and see what might actually be more effective without this slaughter. Now, we didn't do this picture. This was their quote: wolf hunting and trapping, kids don't remember their best day of television. And I have many of these images, and these children are so proud to be with their parent. I have images of children laying on the dead animals like my children or many of our kids would do with a stuffed animal, cuddling with it. And they're forming this disconnect from an early age, that these aren't sentient beings that have feelings and want to live just as much as we do and have just as much right to be here as we do. So it's ingrained. The majority of your learning is in those first 3 years of life. And the former trapper, the president of the Montana Trappers Association, he'd take his baby on his backpack, take him in as a toddler on his backpack. And so if you're taught those things, the majority of your personality is set by the age of 5, then that's in your mind until somebody says, wait a minute, really, take a look at these animals, watch them struggling while they're trapped. Don't leave, you watch them. And if anything I can do is make trappers more uncomfortable, then I'm doing something. I don't feel like I'm doing anywhere near as what I want, but boy, I want them to think about it next time. So here again, trappers aren't born, they're taught. Here, the picture's not that clear, but he's showing this little boy. Boy, looking at him, he might be 2, 3 years old, shooting a coyote. In Montana, trappers as young as, I can't remember if it's 5 or 6. I think it's 6 to 11 can trap. They can only trap muskrat and mink, but remember, coyotes are unprotected, and raccoons and fox. A lot of times people will talk about men, and there's plenty of women trappers, and here's this little girl with a baseball bat, and she's getting ready to beat to death this trapped fox. And I find that particularly upsetting because as a female, we're the nurturers, we're the givers, we're the caretakers. And I mean, what's this girl's future going to be like? And are her parents back there all proud and, celebrating what she's doing? So here's one solution. You didn't think I was going to bring anything funny. It's like, okay, so you really brought us down, so you needed this. I get it. We laugh a lot in my work. We laugh, we have to. If you're not crying, you got to be laughing. We need to get kids out. As many of you know, they're on their phones all the time, and virtual reality and all this. We need to get them out there. We need to get them to form a connection with nature and wildlife and what we come to know, then we respect, we understand, and then we care about it, and then we want to protect it. It's forming that connection. And we're just that way, all of us, like, oh, no, it doesn't affect me. Well, if your dog is trapped, then we see it affects you, and then you're a crusader. So to get people to know, to get them to appreciate these animals to begin with, how does this go on when less than 1% in Montana, and many people don't like trapping, many people don't know it still goes on, but once they do, they're going, trapping? You're kidding. This isn't the 1800s. Big money maintains trapping. Powerful organizations, Safari Club International, the NRA back trapping. Fur is fashionable again. You've got actors and musicians wearing it. And there's many lies that are prolific that trapping, there's a thing called OA, origin assured, and you'll see it on a fur coat. And it's supposed to mean that this animal was humanely killed for your fur coat, and it's just a crock of BS propaganda. Beware of fake fur. Fake fur has been found to contain sometimes real fur. Also, one of the problems I think with fake fur, and the fur industry will use this, it's because you can't afford the real thing. And the real thing is so desirable that this is your imitation. So it really kind of perpetuates. I was back in whatever, gosh, I'm going to date myself. It must have been the 80s, doing the fur-free marches. And fur kind of was going down. And then there's this big resurgence in it. And I kind of think some of the fake fur, because you can't tell. So people, they're just out there in their fake fur, and you can't say, hey, is that, you're not, I'm not one to go up and say, is that fake? Because I hope it's fake. So I just really, we discourage you from fake fur. So this was one of our Montana fur auctions. An average of 55,000 wildlife are reported trapped and killed in Montana annually. These are just the ones reported. Only 5 of those 20 species have to be reported. So, and in the reporting that this is a voluntary survey they send out, 40% of the trappers return the survey. So we don't know at this 55,000, is it really over 100,000? We have no idea. And this again is buy a $29 trapping license to trap fur bearers and just trap all the rest for free. These are the fur prices for this year, or in Montana, so it varies a little bit elsewhere. But for example, a little animal, I don't know if you know what an ermine is. It's a little weasel. It's like 10 inches little. You'll see cute pictures of them being white. Well, what did they go for? The average price and the high price was $2.34. And it takes, if I recall, 125 of them to make a coat. Wolf went for the average price in Montana at this is a local fur auction. They have several during the year. Went for $176, and the high was $212, and they sold at 100%. Bobcat still lucrative. A lot of fur prices are down, thank goodness, and so we're seeing the harvest report numbers go down. But bobcat still pretty lucrative. At one point, bobcat was up to almost $1,000. Coyote is one of the lucrative ones, western coyotes. You've heard of Canada Goose companies and their fur collars. And so when you're in a state like Montana or a lot of states where coyotes, they're totally unregulated. How many can be killed, aerial shot, poisoned, dogs, everything, and now their fur prices are up. So you can only imagine what's happening with the coyotes. So here's my solution. Again. Oops, I didn't give it to you. I'm looking at it and enjoying it. There you go. It's kind of interesting. More people in New York City wear fur, which I found very kind of fascinating, than any other city. and behind them is Chicago, and then Philly, DC, and then Boston. 55% of the people that wear fur are under the age of 40, and Russia and China are still our major purchasers of furs. Over a million animals, though, in this country are estimated trapped annually. So we have a long way to go. We, on our Facebook, Trap Free Montana Public Lands Facebook page, we try to disclose and educate and give the facts, and so that people can decide. We don't want to sensationalize. We don't need to. Trapping is bad enough. Here you go. You decide. And some people say, oh gosh, I hate Montana. I'll never go to Montana. I even had a guy recently slamming me like, you're giving Montana a black eye. You need to stop it. Well, for one, we're not alone. We just happen to be one of the worst. Idaho probably comes in a close second. Wyoming is pretty tough. But they have trap checks, even if they're not sufficient. We're still one of the worst. And also, we're not giving the black eye, we're exposing it. We're showing what's going on. So if people say I didn't know, then we're way behind the 8 ball, at least in Montana. What's really cool is a lot of these fur designers are now going for free. And, major ones, you've got Gucci and Armani, and just keeps growing. And that's really encouraging. As hard as trapping is, or fighting trapping, there's so many avenues we can come at it. And this is one, too, on the fur. Right now, and someone else, maybe Camilla knows, California has a bill to ban furs and fur trapping, which is very exciting. I don't know what the status is on that. New York, pardon me, it is moving, yay! So it's progressing, that's very exciting. New York, which remember, they're the number one place that wears furs, they announced a similar bill to ban fur sales in 2021. Some people say, why aren't you doing it now? Well, trust me, all the work that gets involved in any of these changes takes time. It does take time, it takes a lot of effort, sometimes a lot of money, it takes support, legislative support. Trap Free New Mexico, as many of you might have known, just tried to ban trapping on public lands. We were all so excited. They were getting through committee and they pulled the bill. They found they did not have the support in the House and thought, I totally trust them, we're close allies, that they knew what was best, that they felt better to regroup and come at this again. Arizona passed it years ago. You have trap-free public lands in Arizona. I should quantify that. Body gripping traps. These traps, the leg hold traps, the snares, the conibears are illegal, passed by citizen initiative. I think it was 94. They could still use cage traps, but at least that's far more humane. And I don't know if anybody in Arizona has run into an animal in a cage trap on public land. Colorado did I was part of that actually, and I think it was 2006 we did it in Colorado, and that was a constitutional amendment, again, that ended these kind of traps, actually public and private land. So another thing that keeps this going against our efforts is the agricultural industry in Montana. That's our leading industry. Tourism is second and rapidly growing, and that's significant, very significant. But whenever we go to try to get anything really done, we're up against big ag, and they have a lot of money and they have a lot of power, and people sympathize with them. I sympathize with them. My stepfather was a rancher. They said, this is my livelihood, and this is the way we've done it. And now you've got wolves on the landscape I've got to deal with. I'm killing coyotes year-round. So we need to be able to work with them and try to educate them. This is called flaggery, and it hangs up as a deterrent. There's all kinds of methods that are being found to be much more effective. No one method, from my understanding, works all the time or, forever. They got to kind of mix it up. But this can be a deterrent. Wildlife need to be suspicious of anything unusual, so they often won't cross this. wildlife watching, as I said, tourism is our second leading industry. And our wildlife is worth far more value, at least our predators, I believe, especially wolves, are worth far more money alive than they are dead. Our visitors went down in 2% in 2018, but they spent 10% more. We had 12.2 million visitors in 2018. We only have 1 million residents in our state. Those 12.2 million spent $3.7 billion. It's a lot of money, and that's why when people ask, Casey, what can we do to help? Contact our governor, contact our Department of Tourism. You can find it on either one of our websites, Trap Free Montana, Trap Free Montana Public Lands, and tell them, say, I'm not going to encourage anyone to boycott our state, but at least tell them, I don't want to spend my money there, or I'm not going to spend my money there, or I'm hesitant, or whatever. And this is why, because you do have a voice, and that's your most powerful voice, that money, that talks. And these are everybody's wildlife. Montanans will say, we want to hear from you. You know, you're not a Montanan, and our legislature says any legislative actions, Montanans get first call. So when you submit stuff and say, oh, you know, we don't want you, we want you to pass this bill, or we don't want you trapping wolves, they'll say, well, it's the non-residents. When they introduced trapping wolves, not the concept, but the plan to trap wolves, there were thousands upon thousands of comments submitted. 375 to 1 said, don't trap wolves in Montana. And what they said was, oh, those were all the non-residents. So we know that's not true. Like I said, there's only less than 1% of our million people that trap. But I think you're much more effective using your tourism dollars. And when you do come, we want you to come, let them know, I'm staying at your place because you're wildlife friendly. I'm buying here because you're not out killing wolves, because money talks. So this is our major effort. I run 2 organizations, Trap Free Montana, which is the educational component, and Trap Free Montana Public Lands that does the legislative and trapping reform work. We're all volunteer, 100%. So any contributions go directly to the cause. And these billboards we have a half a dozen of them up across Montana along major highways. We have Helena, Great Falls, Billings, Gallatin Gateway, which Plan B is sponsoring. It's the closest we could get to Yellowstone, but it's right outside Bozeman. And they're very powerful. East Helena, I think I said Helena already. I can't remember the others, but people ask us, we want more of those, to spread the word and educate people. This is the truth in trapping. These animals suffer. This wolf, we of course got permission to use this image. This guy is a professional photographer, and he was out hiking on his time off and came across this wolf in a trap that was dying. And he didn't have his equipment with him. He was just out hiking, and he said it broke his heart. He couldn't do anything. He couldn't legally put her out of her suffering, release her, do anything. And so he, luckily, we said her suffering will not be in vain. We will give testimony to her suffering. So if people, I hate asking for money. I hate it. I'm very uncomfortable. But if you want to help us and get this word out and get more billboards up, please consider making a tax-deductible donation. Adopt a billboard, be a sponsor. Whether you just give a flat donation or a recurring one, you say, we have somebody $5 a month. It's $5 a month, and it just helps us. These billboards cost us on average about $400, $400 to $450 a month. And the trappers are waiting to grab them. So we sign up for a year's contract, and at that end, then we have first right of refusal. And if trappers have far more money than we have, way more money. They profit off what they're killing, for one thing, and they have people sign up and pay for memberships at these trapping classes. So with that, I will go on. We've had some legislative actions. Let me check my time. We've had some legislative actions. Finally, we've got some bills that I don't think has ever happened before in Montana to oppose trapping or change trapping in some format. Trapping's not going away. People say, oh, just ban trapping. Well, that's like saying just ban slavery. It takes a lot of work, and it's progress, and we don't think of any of this as losing. So we're educating more, we're gaining more momentum, and as hard as it gets, I know if we stopped, it would be much worse. So just when you don't feel like you're making a difference, you are. Everybody has something to offer. Betsy asked me to kind of go over some of these bills that we've had. One of the first ones was we partnered with Wolves of the Rockies in doing this, and it was for daily trap checks. We started out wanting 24 hours. The evidence shows after 24 hours, those animals suffer frostbite. A lot of the damage is irreparable. Even when you hear they caught a mountain lion or they caught an animal, their chances aren't very good that they're going to survive, especially when we have trapping in the wintertime. And a condition called capture myopathy also occurs. Worst thing you can do to an animal, a wild animal, is trap them. They can't flee, they can't fight, they're stuck. And so that cortisol level builds up inside of them, and it eventually causes muscle damage to the heart. Wildlife rehabbers can attest to this, veterinarians. And a trapper will say, oh, I released it, it was fine. It was fine, it ran off. Well, what happened later on? And sometimes the signs won't show up for weeks later, and then they die. They just couldn't withstand that. So we tried to get this passed, and I shared with a couple earlier today, really stuck out to me. We were outnumbered. I only managed to get, I think, about 10 or 11. There were 13 of us that spoke for this. We worked with a sponsor who finally agreed to do this bill for us. We finally found a legislator willing to touch trapping, an issue of trapping in our state, because that's like, no, you can't do that. And at the hearing, we had 13 talking in favor of it, and 39 trappers showed up to oppose it. And that's very common in Montana. It's very common. Sometimes there's a handful of us that go to these. And Mark with Wolves of the Rockies and I, we were going sometimes once, twice a week, and that's a 6-hour round-trip drive. That's over McDonald Pass, that's in wintry conditions, so minimum of a 6-hour drive. And yet these trappers came from all over. So one trapper in his testimony, he said, trapping gives animals a dignified death and is better than nature. And I thought, boy, I hope nobody thinks about that when you're really old and decrepit and, who's gonna say, yeah, how fast can you run, Pops? I got the 22 out here. This little guy, we helped. He was on his property. Owners let him out every day to go for a run with the other one. He didn't come back. And it was over 2 days later that he came back. They looked everywhere, and they knew there was trapping out there. And the vet thinks he was snared around his leg and that the trapper let him go. The trappers in Montana are supposed to report any dogs they trap within 24 hours, but they don't have to do anything. They can just let them go. Well, that's pretty scary, because do you really want maybe an injured dog running out there? What about wildlife? What about the pet owners who are distraught? So luckily he came back home, and his vet bill was over $1,000, and she said, I don't have it. I said, we'll help you. And so we paid for his amputation. And he's just a character, I guess. Ralphie is his name. And we use this to try to promote daily trap checks. If they did the daily trap check, maybe the injuries wouldn't have been so severe, because it was over 2 days. This bill died in committee. It died 12-6. There's only 18 on our House Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And it did not die party line. People often think, and we'll get this on our Facebook page, that, oh, those damn Trump supporters and those damn Republicans, and they'll go crazy. You know, well, Obama didn't stop it either. Trapping is a bipartisan issue. It's very cool in such a divided country that that's one thing. Those that oppose trapping, we see it both sides, the Democrats and the Republicans, and encourage people. You need to hold your elected officials accountable, and you need to find out how they feel about wildlife. We need to make it an issue. We need to make it an issue when we're talking to candidates, when we're voting, and we need to vote accordingly. We will have for Montanans, and I think I'd love to try to do it nationally, and there are some organizations that do that. But I know for us, we will have on our website so people can track and see how they voted and remember them and go back as a referral and vote accordingly. This was another bill that we tried to pass. So we're one of the only states that doesn't have mandatory trapper education. And it was one thing we agreed upon with the trappers, that we need this, that a 12-year-old can go out and just start trapping coyotes and whatever else he catches. Like I said, there's no such thing as wolf trapping because it's indiscriminate. You never know what you're going to get. And on both these bills, I worked really, really hard on the language, looking at other states, and our sponsor was wonderful. She gave Mark Cook and I permission to work directly with legislative services, and tried to get the trappers involved in this because we all wanted it, and they basically said, we won't support it because you're involved. And we had different reasons for wanting it. They wanted it as a recruitment tool and to get more membership. FWP, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, wants it so they can tell the public our trappers are highly educated. And we wanted it to reduce non-incidental catches and to try to teach the ecological value of these wildlife and also non-lethal means of addressing conflicts. Wanted them to come out better educated what they're doing, and also things like, what's a more humane way to kill them. We wanted an advisory board that could be, include the non-consumptive user, the other stakeholders, veterinarians, wildlife rehabbers, and that was the breaking point. They were kind of like, who are you to have any say on trapping? We don't want you on it, and Fish, Wildlife, and Parks managed to convince our sponsor of our bill to change the language before it was the hearing even happened, and I think she was really just hoping to, be able to work with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, but they struck every single thing in the bill. Everything was stricken in the bill, really just giving the trappers that if you even trapped anywhere, 20 years ago, another state, you don't have to do this class. So it was very unfortunate. It was tabled in committee just the other day. So, but we do have a win, yay, believe it or not. This was a bad bill, so we have trap setbacks. The distance they have to put a trap from a trail or a road to try to protect the public, and that came back with a lot of work itself. Well, the trappers and the legislators, and now I found out also Fish, Wildlife, and Parks in Montana want to remove these setbacks on these closed roads that are still open to the public. So when I say closed, they can't have cars or trucks, but they can have snowmobiles. And these are coveted roads in Montana and probably many places. Any dog owner or cross-country skiing, you want to go for a hike, you like these roads. And that means these monster wolf traps, the snares, the conibears could be right on these roads. Unmarked, you won't know. They don't mark their traps. They don't have to mark their traps. You would not know. And we killed it initially. We didn't kill it, but it was tabled in committee and all of a sudden resurrected, which I don't know how that happened because I thought that time was over. And it moved to the House and got a 50-50 vote. I mean, we were frantic within a day. Just,
doing everything we possibly could. I brought a wolf trap, one of these big monsters, and said, who's going to be held responsible when the lawsuit, somebody, the wrong dog, not that there's a right one, but the wrong dog gets caught in this, or a child. People were out there cross-country skiing, and why they want it is, this is what the wolves, they want it for mainly to kill more wolves. Wolves want the groomed trails. They don't want to run through the deep snow, so the trappers want to be right there on these trails. And this hasn't gone away. It failed in the legislature because of that vote, but it's already being pushed to our commissioners, and we'll have to fight that in a couple of months or so, because it would be disastrous. Those conibear traps, like I said, the 7x7 that's in a cubby, children, what child? They're more observant, more curious than we are. It's going to run over what's in there and reach their arm in there, and it could be a 10x10, and it's going to be major, or a child running along in a snare. We had a bicycle rider caught in a snare riding through and taken off his bike. So it's gone insane in Montana. I just want to tell you, it's like above and beyond. And to keep that in mind when you think, well, I wonder if they're going to delist wolves, and this is what's happening in the states where they are delisted, and it's worsening. The Yellowstone project, this is when the government was shut down. This is what our Montana trappers posted. Enjoying the shutdown in Yellowstone, finally a reason to thank Democrats. Joking that they're going to go in there now and just kill all these wolves because the government was shut down and who was going to stop them. And there was another bill introduced by Senator Fielder, wildlife biologist, and it was to try to close the quote, eliminate the trapping of Yellowstone wolves. There's 2 areas right outside where we have a little quota. It would have meant 4 wolves, that you can't trap those 4 wolves. And again, our legislature is not animal friendly in Montana. Carol flew all the way in from across the country to testify. We had a pretty good turnout, not near enough. Maybe we had, I don't know if we had 15 or 20. Great testimony, the facts. These are habituated wolves, they're valuable wolves that people come to see. They don't know any different. They cross an imaginary line and they can be killed. And what does that do to our tourism? The research, the loss in research on these animals, and it died in committee, 9-1, 9-1. Again, it was not party line. We had other Democrats on there. So, got to know who these people are that we're voting for, need to vote out. This one, HB 279, is to reimburse, quote, ethical wolf trappers. It's hard to say with a straight face. For their expenses, and it passed the House 49-45, and it passed in the Senate committee just the other day, the Senate fishing game. Senator Fielder is our chair. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Senator Fielder. You should be. Look her up. She's a major drive behind selling off our public lands. They moved from Washington, where trapping is much more restrictive. Her and her husband are trappers because Montana is a heyday for them. And so this bill is dangerous. Like I said, there's no such thing as reimbursing or a wolf trapper. And I tried to bring that up. What about all these other animals? Who's paying for their costs? And I got the gavel twice. Ms. Shorks, be quiet, stay on stay on topic, stay on the bill. Oh well, but this bill is an incentive for more wolf trapping, and so therefore it's an incentive more trapping. And it's based out of an organization now in Idaho called Foundation for Wildlife Management. We refer to it as Foundation for Wolf Killing, and they're paying an average of $580 for a trapped wolf. It's a bounty. These wolves, as you saw, their pelts are selling for over $200 anyhow, and it costs them $29 to go out there and get their permit, get their equipment, and kill 5 wolves. It's gone so far, when I looked up what's happening in Idaho with this organization, they're reimbursing them for their car maintenance, for their lodging. another organization, Endangered Species Coalition, named it the Welfare Trappers Bill, which is good. So it'll go before the Senate here any day. I didn't know, it didn't show up on today's agenda. I don't know if they meet tomorrow. And I don't know, I hope we can kill it, but I don't know. And if we can't, then we're going to need to go to the governor. And thank goodness right now our governor, whom some of you might not know, Governor Bullock is running for, talk about him running for presidency. So again, that's where non-residents can come in and start saying, I need you to step up to the plate if you're ever going to get my vote in what's happening with our wildlife. And I think that brings me to this little guy. This was a video of this animal, and this little Aussie mix, he was found by a trapper set in a bobcat trap set, and he posted a video, and this trapper was mad. He was cussing and, this poor dog, and I know who you are, and I'm gonna get you, and I'm gonna sue you, and he's using every name under the sun, while the trap dog is still cowering behind him. And then he got this little guy out. He shows it on the video, and the dog comes over and hides in his coat. It was heartbreaking. The trappers gave him so much hell, like, what are you doing, you turncoat? You can't put that out there. He took it down. But I had gotten a hold of Mark and said, Mark, grab that video. And then I had snapped these shots from it. And I talked to the guy, and I asked, what are you going to do with the dog? You can see his paw, the damage that was in there. And I said, I have somebody who might be interested in adopting this dog. And he said, well, if he's a friend of yours, then I'll let him have him. And so Mark Cook of Wolves of the Rockies and his wife drove across gosh knows where and got this dog. And he's yeah. And what did they name him? Trapper. So on that, are there any questions? Any quick questions? Yes, in back. Oh, sorry, I forgot you have the mic, sorry.
Can you actually make a living being a trapper? Because if you look at the prices of the pelts
I know.
and the duration of the trapping season,
Right.
what do you do the rest of the year?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. That's a great question. Because some people say, I don't like it, but gosh, this is their livelihood. False. It's a fallacy. They found that the average trapper is, I think, around 47, the average trapper makes $40,000 a year in a full-time job. That's part of why they don't want to have to do these trap checks. They don't want to have to go out there every day in the morning or every evening and check them. And so I think, some of them are making some money off of it, but they're certainly, those days, they're not making a living. And they say the number one reason they trap is for the fun of it. So, thank you, good question.
So the billboards, it's about $5,000 a year to do a billboard?
Let me think. I didn't do the math that way, but if you were to average out like $400 a month, definitely.
Okay, so if I contact you, I'd be interested in helping you guys do some fundraisers for that.
That would be wonderful. That would be terrific. Yes, thank you. Yay. I guess I don't have to stand up here anymore. I feel so official. Oh, wait, I have to get my cheat sheet in case you ask me something. Oh, I did have something. Maybe somebody will ask it.
Okay, you ready? I happen to have the same last name as a Philadelphia furrier. So I got a lot of emails regarding furs, and they were all from China.
Oh.
And I was wondering, is that something that you're seeing in terms of China being interested in either providing furs or as a marketplace?
Yeah, China's one of the biggest ones to buy the furs. In fact, I don't have it on here, but China and Russia, absolutely. Still major purchasers of furs.
Casey, can you explain to people what happens if they're walking along a trail and their dog gets caught in a trap in Montana, what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do?
Well, that's kind of, that's a fallacy that was going around in case that's where you're going, that you can't release your pet. You absolutely can, and
So
you
it's
better.
not, it does not belong to the trapper?
No, no, and thank you for clarifying that, because I said it belongs to, yeah.
Thanks.
No, yeah, thank you.
So Casey, based on the work that Steve and I do and how we're focusing on getting into schools and doing education, you know, we're aware that they actually teach trapping courses to young kids in their schools as part of the school curriculum. What would even be the beginning step of getting into those schools and getting permission to start teaching the kids of these trapping communities about wildlife and starting to change that? I mean, I don't even imagine that we would even be allowed to do that.
What I find, Paula, is so much of all of this is based on relationships. And one good thing with Montana, so much of it is small. Like the town I live in is $4,000. Oh, I got money in the brain. 4,000 residents. And so you come to know people. And so forming those different relationships, actually it's interesting you should say that, because the janitor at the Darby School is a trapper. So he has that in, and he puts on his mountain man attire and gets all the kids out there. So I think you have to find those relationships. Somebody, a supportive science teacher that will let you come in, or talking to the principal, going to different events where they're at, and they have their table, we have our table, like some of the kids' events, to educate them that way, I think would be good. I just got an email today, the 4-H in Montana is offering a trapper education class for kids. I haven't had a chance to look at it.
Just to tag on, wouldn't that create more of a war up there for people like you who are really head to head with these guys?
You mean if trying to do the educational
Yeah.
part? Well, we do it. Somebody asked, what about, and this was years ago too, what about like bringing your pack? I would not, I don't think it's safe in Montana. I don't think it's safe. Yeah, I know, right. It wasn't safe for you. I mean, I would not trust these people as far as I can throw them with this. It's a small percentage, but they have so much power and so much hatred for these animals. I would be afraid they would throw poison meat or take a pot shot or raise such a ruckus at the school. I don't want those damn vermin at my school. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's you're listening to Casey speak right now, but I think it's really hard to understand for anyone from here or California, or maybe not so much from here, but from California, from New York, from different places in the country. The hatred there is a religion. It's almost like telling some really powerful religious person that God doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's that powerful.
Yeah.
I was out there where I met Casey and Mark in the Bitterroot, following trappers around. I knew nothing. I was a rookie in a red outfit and a snowmobile and for about a week or two. And then I learned the hard lesson that these people hate with a passion that is like, it's like watching the movie Deliverance.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very different world that we are not aware of in most cities and most places. And when people don't understand that kind of hate, it's time that people really did understand it, because it's powerful, and people are afraid. Even the people that live in Darby, Montana, and I spent quite a bit of time there, the ones that like wolves whispered to me, I like wolves.
Right.
Don't tell my husband. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's how crazy it is there. So I just wanted to get that across, because you're listening to Casey, but it's really from a perspective, it's very different.
Thank you. I wanted to say one thing on that I missed, and it's important. So their goal now is to get the wolves in Montana. We had 600, last confirmed count at the end of 2017 was 633 wolves. They killed 332 this season. We're over elk. They'll say, well, we have to protect the elk. And we are over elk objectives by 46,000 carrying capacity or management objectives are about 90,000 elk. We're 46,000, and these nasty, all these kill wolf bills that Wolves of the Rockies and us keep fighting over and over and over again. They're coming out of region northwest Montana, where they say the elk are down and we can't find our elk. Even those numbers are within the management objectives on the lower end. We also have 2.6 million cattle. Remember, we have 1 million people. So you take 206 million cattle, 633 wolves, and we might have just cut them in half for all we know. And there was, what were the numbers from 2018? I'm trying to see it now, how many. I think it was like, I don't have it on here. I wrote all these other things down. But in the end, less than 0.2% of livestock deaths are attributed to wolves. If I remember correctly, there was something like 70 or 80 confirmed or probable causes of wolf depredation and 2 dogs. So, you know, that's significant to a rancher, the loss of any, especially if it was your prime breeding, you know, cow. But that's not what this is about. We already have a bill called SB 200 that allows any landowner to kill a wolf if they even think they're a threat. Well, to some of these, if you see a wolf, I saw it, it's a threat. Legally, they could still kill it. So that's not, when you hear this, well, we got to protect the livestock or we got to protect the elk, and that's why we're increasing all this wolf trapping and killing and all these things. That's not getting those targeted animals. It's just a war on them. So, last question. Yes.
We have a problem in this country of minority rule, not in terms of racial or gender minority, obviously, but like the fact that so few people control decision making. You know, you mentioned there's like, 1% of Montana trappers are really driving trapping policy. I work a lot in the Southwest with livestock grazing and livestock management. And, it's no secret in the Southwest and many Western states that the ranching community really drives a lot of public lands policy, and they're a tiny fraction of those of us who own the public lands. And I think a lot of it gets to tradition, that these small but vocal groups of people have effectively claimed to own American tradition. And one of our greatest challenges as conservation advocates is to convey the message effectively that appreciating nature and conserving wildlife and preserving wild places is an American tradition in itself. And we are largely failing in that. And consistently, those who are working in extractive industries win the conversation about American tradition. And I think part of it is pride. They're very proud people. The picture of the guy with the wolf in the snow, super proud dude. And a lot of us in our own personal advocacy and activism do it in a very insular way. We come to these little bubbles and we talk to our friends. We might wear t-shirts out in public, but we really need to ramp up our own personal pride in protecting America and reclaim the notion of patriotism that and reject the very tragic history of this country, which is racial genocide against Native Americans and slavery of African Americans. So we have a lot of work to do in that, but I think that seeing things like this and the work that everyone is doing really is uplifting in that we're hopefully making progress in that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.